Hello there and welcome to Il Salotto Sessions. I am Sara Seravalli, an Italian event organizer with a profound enthusiasm for design and architecture, bringing over 15 years of experience from my work across showrooms in Milan, Paris and London. Fueled by a passion for connecting people in the design world, I founded Design Pop-Up in 2014, a specification-focused event that has since traveled throughout the UK and Ireland. Today I'm expanding my vision with Il Salotto, a vibrant space, both physical and virtual, dedicated to inspiring meaningful conversations and fostering connections within the design community. I hope you will enjoy my chats. Hello there and good morning. Welcome to this new episode of Il Salotto Session. Today I'm here with the fabulous Jo Love of Love Design Studio. Good morning, Jo.
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm good. So, long time in the making. We were really struggling to get a date that works for everybody. But finally, here we are. Unfortunately, Susan is missing, your business partner. So, wishing her the best, a quick recovery. The first question was actually asking you how the two of you got together, because I know you've been working together for like 20 years.
Yeah, well, it's quite a lovely story actually, because I was working on show homes. I think it was a long time ago. And I was going into Habitat and I saw Susan, who, if you've met Susan, she's very little and she's dealing with these clients in Habitat that were being really awful and rude to her. And she did it so beautifully and eloquently. And she always helped me with getting furniture for the show homes we were doing at the time. And I just sat down, I looked at her and I went, my goodness, you dealt with that so brilliantly. I said, do you want a job? I'm really struggling to do this on my own. And she was like, yes. And I said, when can you start? She was like, straight away. And then we worked ever since. So that's how I met her, when she was working in Habitat. And then she stayed with the company, my first company. She stayed there, that were doing high end. When we sold that company, she stayed there for a little while. And I was like, when you're ready to come back. And she,
because you're quite the entrepreneurs, aren't you? You've already built and sold a couple of companies before now setting up the Love Design Studio.
Yeah, and I think they've been, both those companies have been amazing companies to work with. I've learned so much and they both were very different. And yeah, this third company that we've set up now has just been that kind of all those things that you've learned over the years. And it's kind of, I would say it's doing all the things that we want to do. It's more than interior design, whereas the first company was interior design and architecture. And the second company was obviously pure interior design. And obviously it was called Love Interiors, but I didn't want it to just be interiors. We're doing lots of
So normally I've historically always been focusing on the specification market and therefore commercial projects. So it makes a quite nice change for me. Finally, we talk about homes. Homes, they play such a big role in our lives. If it's a good home, can actually make us feel much better. You have a bad day, you just go home and relax, put the fire on and chill with the dog. So why did you eventually decide to you went from show homes to just homes?
Well, actually, when the first ever job I did when I set up on my own, I was working for an architect. I did a few years with an architect doing retail, and I loved the whole psychology about shopping and how to get people to buy things and feel comfortable in an environment, spend more time in there. But I realized that actually the root of everything is where people live, and kind of supporting people in their homes is the fundamentals of what we need to do. But I've always had that link with sort of psychology. And I just think it's such a powerful thing, your home, from, whatever your home looks like, that there are little things that you can do to make a difference, to kind of support you in your everyday life, really. I remember writing and I've always had this kind of idea about, making design and good homes accessible for everybody. And I think it's more so now that you can buy things to do, there's cheap ways to do things to your home. You don't always have to spend a lot of money on that. But I've always had that obsession with get those roots of what is good for you at home. And then that supports you in whatever you want to do then. It's like the basis of, your life, really. And there's a kind of aspect. My dissertation at university was all about homes and creating homes for sustainable homes, really, at the time, which was a long time ago. I'm quite old, but how you can mix that sustainability and planet. And if you're doing that, it inevitably gives you some kind of alignment and harmony to create your home better, because ultimately that's the most place that, you feel peace is at home, really.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, it could be. What's the word? Your lair, right?
Yes.
Your place where you can regenerate, where you can find your peace. So you touched very quickly on the psychology side of things, and I know from a previous chat that we had that you've got quite a unique design process that involves much more than just sitting down with your client and say, okay, what do you need? What color scheme do you want? It's more about you talk quite a lot about the energy of a home.
Yeah. So that for me is, I think we all do things in our own way, don't we? And I think a lot of designers very much work intuitively. You sort of feel your way through the project and you can kind of gauge how much you do. And I think with the kind of energy side of things, I've always that's kind of been at the forefront of my decision making, but I didn't realize that it may be a bit stronger than the people's forefront of that decision making. I've always felt and had a really strong sense of different spaces. It's always been something that I felt that maybe not everybody understands, that kind of sense of energy, good and bad energy. I think everyone recognizes when you go into places, especially if you're looking for a new home, when you go in a place and you're, oh, I don't like it, or I don't, knowing that sort of feeling thing. I think we all have that ability to do that. And I think mine's just kind of slightly excel when I go into a space, but I use that as an advantage. And I think, okay, rather than it being, this is a negative thing, how do we do to change that? And you can absolutely change energy in a space. Decoration's an easy one to do that. But sometimes it's more fundamental. It's to do with, more of the architecture of the building, the land that it sits on, the sort of geology. And then obviously the whole kind of the way that the sunlight works and, our circadian rhythms can have an effect in a place. It could be really simple, just putting a window in a certain place that lets light in.
I remember I was for work in Poland a few years back, and the people I was working with, they organized a trip to the Auschwitz concentration camp. And this is a story to say that I'm probably not as sensitive as you are, but I remember walking through this space and the sadness was overwhelming. You're talking about the energy of a place that I was looking around and seeing all these people taking pictures and smiling. I said, how could you possibly smile in a place like this?
Wow.
It's just, it's so heavy, so sad, so painful. And then similarly, I think also the person that lives in a building is kind of permeates the space with your own energy. I don't know if you have experienced that, but I'm quite a chilled person most of the time. And then I remember a lot of friends when I was living on my own. Obviously, if you share the house with a family, then it's more difficult. Well, it's not difficult, it's different because you've got different energies coming into play. But when I was on my own, in my own little flat, I remember my friends visiting and say, oh, this is so relaxing in here. It's funny, isn't it?
Yeah, but you absolutely do that. And I think it's one of those things that I would say I'm exploring it and learning it all the time. And I think that whole kind of unknown element is something we just don't know. I always think there's kind of three elements to when you're designing, and I've been speaking about it more recently for this year because I think, it's easier as the years have gone over for me to talk, as have gone on, for me to talk about some of the things I get into because people are more open. I think since COVID, something happened, and in a way that people were thinking they've had the chance to pause to think about, there's more to this crazy work. And this is all linked with how we kind of, perceive and experience life. And I think you've got your kind of factual, your mindset, which is like your left brain, that logical process. You've got your right brain, which is creative and thinking about the future. And, maybe it's your imagination and your vision, that kind of thing. And then you tie that in with, what your heart wants, that kind of emotion, that really strong emotion. And then there's the other factor, which is slowly trickling into people's awareness, about this kind of spiritual, whatever that is, whether it's, obviously historically it's religion. And that was a way, if you look at a lot of the teachings of many religions, they're all very similar, but they are based on, well, this is a very generalization here, but, they're based on a connection that you can't physically see. It's not logical. You can't rationalize it. But there's something in there within us that has an element of power to it, as in the sense of power of understanding and feeling. So I absolutely think that people in homes make an impression in there. And also there's a link, it'll be just a matter of time before we prove this. And I'm hoping that we are going to be working with some universities, because I've been speaking to them about, how we can measure some of this energy, feel, and that kind of thing, especially if people have been sick in a space, because I'm very sensitive to smells that other people can't smell in a space, that kind of energy of when someone's not been very well, and it dissipates after a amount of time, and you can work on that. I think once you're aware of it, you suddenly realize that nearly everybody can feel this. It's just if you want to focus on it. It's like anything, isn't it? What you focus on, get better at. It sort of intensifies it, really. I've just been working on it for a long time because it was there from
it's
a child.
It's a bit like selective eating, or sometimes you just you don't hear things you don't want to hear.
Yeah, it's so true. Yeah, and people, I think for a lot of people, it's quite frightening. Oh, I don't want to go there, and I've had that before, and I know I've lost projects before when I've maybe been a bit too open about what I've been experiencing there. And it's too much. And I get that. You have to gauge that. But my experience of all the work that I do and the research I do, the College of Psychic Studies as well, it's all really lovely. It's just, I don't engage in anything that is linked with anything negative. It's just actually quite addictive because it's so lovely. And it's just a very nice.
So how's the psychic element of it going alongside the psychological and then the design process?
So the psychic element is something that if the clients are interested in using that, we can access the unconscious level. So I'm saying that I feel like there's a way in to help unlock with clients what's blocking them to try and, create a home that works for them. Because all these things are, if you think about it as kind of a line, but that you're in flow. Like I always think of life as like it's being a stream or a river. And the ideal is that that stream or river is very clear and it runs very smoothly. You might get things that fall in, there's a few animals building things just to stop that flow, and you have to negotiate with them. Or, maybe the water becomes polluted, all these things. You can use that analogy for everything, but it's a really nice way to think about it. And you're aiming for this clear flow. Being conscious about those blocks that come in to stop you doing something is really important, because I think the way that I look at it as well is, if you look at your home as a reflection on your life, it's a really easy way to have those difficult things that you need to face in your home. And if you look at it, the two the same, it's really interesting, because you can do it without actually facing it. You can kind of use your home as an analogy. So I'll give you an example of that. I did work with a lady, and I'm sure she'll be fine about me talking about this. I won't go into detail, but she was struggling. She was actually a designer herself. She's a really kind of established designer. She had a block in her bedroom where she was sleeping of what to do. She just got stuck with it. And you think, kind of what you do. But using the psychic stuff helped us unlock, it just helped us have a conversation in unlocking that first layer, that unconscious layer, to find out why you can decide what colours you were connecting with. And it sounds really sort of trivial. And I always really struggle with this sometimes, that, there's people, you're spending so much time on getting this right. And then there's people really struggling with, trying to have actually a home. But I do feel like we all deserve the opportunity to make the best of the circumstances that we're in. I mean, she's fortunate enough to make her home how she wanted it. And we just unlocked that little bit And it was a really lovely opportunity for me working with her because she was open to it. And she said to me, she says, gosh, I feel a bit like it was a mixture of healing, counselling and interior design all at the same time. So
Yeah, 360 degrees package.
Yeah, it's a 360. But
Right. So basically, if I know what I want to do about a certain bedroom, then I am okay. It means I am, there is no blockages anywhere.
Yeah, I think that clear thinking means that you can, continue with that. You might want to challenge that. So obviously, there's the other side of this, that being comfortable and being settled and being happy in, how things are, is that going to push you? Is that going to get you out your comfort zone and help you move forward to continue that flow? Because we need to be keeping that continual flow in growth, in learning, in, creating. And when I say creating, I talk about creating a lot, but I can apply that to mathematical equations, coming up new ways to solve things, for left brain stuff as well as right brain. Creativity is just new ways of thinking things. So that links with, sorry.
And you wrote a book about designing homes, right? It's called The Conscious Home.
I have written that book, but I've not released it because it's still ongoing. So The Conscious Home I wrote probably 2006, 2007, and that was all about raising our awareness to link the planet with, the sustainability element and being more in tune with nature. And I think we're kind of there now. We know that is a situation. But I realized that this book is probably something that is so therapeutic for me to be able to, help me keep in flow and what things I'm researching and looking at. So we've now taken it to the next level. The new level of this book is called A Philosophy for Living. And it's really taking those three elements of your mind, body and spirit and how you can intertwine those. Use the home as a tool to be able to, improve your mental, physical and your whole life, basically, and just keep working at that. Nobody's got it right. It's just an ongoing thing. We're all working on it.
It's an evolution, isn't it? As long as you don't stop working, then keep trying to get a better person, a happier person, a more content person. And as you say, you really want a home. You don't really want a show house. You want a place where you're so comfortable that it can be regenerate, can help you feel better.
It has to support you. And I think the interesting thing is, although I started in designing retail, 25 or 26 years ago, I was doing retail and then I did quite a bit of workplace. I still have done a few of those pieces in between, but I really do love doing anything in the sectors. More recently, I've worked on sort of education. We've worked on all different sectors because I think these philosophies, you can apply them to, and how you design can then be applied to any space that you're interactive with where you've got buildings, especially workplace.
We've done a lot of work with our events over well-being in architecture and architecture for well-being. And we had a panel discussion in the Dublin event 2 years ago about wellness. There was one interior designer that specialized in homes, and she was saying how obviously the biophilia element of it plays a big role, but also the use of natural materials, which is also something you do on a regular basis.
Yeah, and the thing is, once you're aware of this, it makes it really difficult because, furniture, it's exactly the same as food. And this is why I love that kind of, that link between us as humans and then our home. If you're putting, you want food to be as pure and as close to nature as possible and as good quality without chemicals and everything. And it's the same with furniture. I mean, there's a practical element to this, that a lot of cheap furniture, not all of it, but a lot of cheap furniture will have chemicals that will be released in it. That's why if you're buying cheap furniture, it's probably even better to buy secondhand where all those chemicals have already been released. But, I think the awareness of that, you suddenly see things a little bit toxic, like when you look at certain foods now and processed foods, it feels very toxic to kind of look at it. Once that's on your radar, if you have that intention to get as much natural materials in as possible, it really does make a difference because all these elements are linked, with your whole body is a system that responds to different environments, and it's, on so many different levels. And we know, I mean, what's so brilliant at the moment is some of the things that I've been talking about, the neuroscience is catching up. So I can say, yes, I know that is, it's a bit of a relief that I'm not completely nuts. But I always talk about the thing about grounding, if you're having one of those days where you're like, oh, you can't focus, can't do anything, like, just go and stand outside on the grass for a minute, because the science is behind there. And this is similar with furniture. And there is the other thing that's quite interesting when you go to houses and there's a lot of sort of hard, plasticky, shiny surfaces. I've been in homes before, and if this happens so often, you go into the kitchen, I'm watching where people are walking around their space, they're walking towards the southern side of the house, or what materials they touch as well, because we're doing it subconsciously. It's really interesting to sort of have that on your radar. But the amount of time I've seen people leaning either on their Aga or their oven, but mainly on their natural stone or composite stone worktop, because it's so grounding, because they're like, oh, I've got all this work to do. We've got so much to do in the house. It's overwhelming. And they're clinging on to, or timber, natural timber as well is obviously, there's something nice, hugging a tree. It's the same sort of feeling as that. There's some science behind that. So yeah, it
So
is
what
quite
about
interesting about
you
materials.
mentioned very briefly the orientation of a building. Well, how does that influence our well-being, how the house is set up?
So, and this is really important. And I'm surprised actually how, I think a lot of architects get frustrated sometimes when we're given, the challenges of so your circadian rhythm is where you're linked with, where the sun rises and it sets.
Yep.
In its sort of basic terms. So if you're in a lovely sunny room in the morning, we know that just makes you feel better. It's some of these things, we know these already. It's just kind of putting that on your radar. So orientating a house to sort of capture as much of that sunlight as possible, because, the sunlight is so energizing for us. It's so good for us. And light, if you ask most people when you say that initial question, how do you want what's your ideal home like? They usually say light. Oh, I want it nice and light. And I'm like, what exactly does that mean? You can go into that, but people want to be connected with light. I think living in an underground cave is probably the least appealing. Obviously having a space with lots of windows has got challenges, but just capturing light and but the other thing as well with that kind of other thinking behind that is, experiencing that connection to outside on that other level. Obviously the biophilia is, for me, we must be doing that, having lots of plants, and for the air quality and everything like that is so good. But there's another, that looking after something and keeping it alive. I read all these funny things about people saying that they've measured that your plants can hear you come home, or when you're nearby and stuff. I don't know if that's real. You know what? I'm open to everything. There's nothing off my radar, because I don't think we don't know it all yet at all. We're really just beginning this journey of discovering how we can respond to the elements of the earth and how we actually respond to it, the moon and all those things which were seen as witchy and, all those things that seemed out there. Let's have a look at it and see what's the science behind it. You don't necessarily need the science. If it works for you, it works for you.
Totally.
So
I don't know
answer your
what's
question.
happening to me, but I'm going through a phase of animals. I'm creating a bit of a zoo in the house. Having a
Oh, yeah.
6-year-old, that doesn't help. But all of a sudden, we are thinking about, we got the dog, we got a cat, we got the chicken. So now we're thinking about mini parrots and lovebirds and maybe a pig. And it's like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
maybe it's going too far.
Yeah, I'm quite keen on a cow actually, or a mini cow would be quite fun. Well, I think with the animals, and I think animals are so good for us for that listening without, really listening. Because I think something I've learned over the years, I can talk, but I really consciously tried to listen. Somebody said to me once, you've got 2 ears, 1 mouth, listen more. And with animals, you're listening, you're you find their frequency, especially with dogs. Dogs are brilliant at it. I think that's why
Yeah.
people connect with dogs so quickly. You can get on their frequency straight away. And it's the same with buildings and land. You've got to find where that frequency is to see if there's anything that you can change. But animals are a brilliant way to kind of do that, training with yourself, really. Horses, obviously obsessed by horses, as they're everywhere in everything I do. Horses are amazing because their hearts, the energy and the exhales from their hearts up to like 5 meters, and you connect with them. And when you feel that click in, that's when you know they're not going to kill you. A half-ton animal's not going to kind of kill you. Like, okay, we're tuned in. Okay, I know you're just going to throw me off on the ground in a minute, so I'm going to get off first. But dogs are brilliant. They're brilliant at tuning into us. So even if, sometimes, I mean, I was watching something really sad on the TV the other day. I mean, there's so much sad on the TV, isn't there? But I was just like, I felt it well up in me, like, oh God, that's heartbreaking. And my dog from the other side of the room came over and just looked at me. They feel it. And I think there is, and there will be some more science that comes out. We know that hormones and things like that, stress, you can catch stress. All these things we know that they're real. We can't see them, but we know they're real. And I think animals will teach us. I think this is going to be the next thing. I think animals will teach us about those frequencies and how we can access those, because they prove it to us all the time.
Yeah.
They've got that.
And there's also that element of being connected to nature, right? Animals and biophilia is all part of the same scheme. The more you are out there, then it helps your mental health. And so how you also use music when you're designing one of your homes? How does that work?
I've always used music. I think music is, for me, I kind of can access somewhere with me. I can access my creativity really quickly with music. It helps me, because I quite enjoy I don't want to be like level all the time. I quite enjoy, when the mood is like lower, when the mood is high, really kind of exaggerating that, because that's the joy for me about life, is that you embrace those highs and lows, and and then you kind of really appreciate everything. And so music does that for me. But I also have synesthesia, which I think a lot of people have. I realize a lot more people have, and which we did a talk in Clerkenwell recently. We did sort of showed people how you can use that, the way my brain works. So synesthesia is where your senses merge. So for me, when I hear music, I can see colors and shapes. And I can very much, and it's all senses based and experience based. So we've just finished an apartment in Westminster, and we did the whole apartment based on the synesthesia and music. So we chose appropriate music for each of the rooms. So interestingly, in the kitchen, we had one about the sun and the shine, lotus, and it was all really lovely. And it got those morning vibes and healthy food and growth. And then we had different ones. We had sort of travel ones in one of the rooms. And then we had ones about relaxation. They're quite obvious. But when I listened to the music, then I sketched what I was seeing and feeling. And then we painted it on the walls, the ceilings. So it was a 360 experience. I've not heard that, but I quite like that expression. I might use that again. So it was a 360. But, my intention in there was to create some calm, but create some alignment between, as you walked around the spaces, there was some kind of changes in the space. So that this was sleeping, that this was relaxation, enjoyment, this was eating and healthy. And then we had a bit of Bob Marley as we were walking through the plants, and, it was fun. But also these things should be fun, shouldn't they? I use
totally,
music.
And Natalie, it's your home. If it's not fun to create a home, then what would it be?
So we did an experiment. I think we did 2 or 3 sessions where we played music, we showed colors. I just showed the colors that I associated with that piece of music. And then I gave everyone cards on what they felt or saw, and I said, write words, because I use words a lot. The words is the first thing I go to when I'm designing. I said, write words, draw something. And some people had nothing. They were like, I just feel nothing. But that's something as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like you have no connection with that. So we got everyone to hold the cards up. It was fascinating. People were like having quite strong feelings about certain colors. White was completely controversial. People hated it, loved it. It was so bizarre. People were writing things, but it ignited something. So if you've got a block, using music is a great way to, and a lot of these techniques I use to unblock things are based on a reframe, which is a very NLP thing. So that is, looking at something in a different way, which helps solve a problem.
So where do you find the time to do all the psychology or the psychic, all your research, writing a book, having kids? How do you find the time to do everything?
I've just worked with amazing people. I've always got amazing people around me that support me in what I do. So Susan and I are a great team. Um, she just supports everything I do, and she's an amazing brain and how we can and she's great on the design detailing. And I've got loads of people that we've always worked around that just support that. So I'm quite good at delegating in my work life, and that I've had to train myself for that. That helps so that I can focus on those bits. And then, because I know as much as I've tried, to do certain things, I'm like, oh no, I can do that. It takes me like 1,000,000 years to do something that takes somebody else like 5 minutes. So, I mean, that's understanding yourself and kind of facing that is actually quite a good part of business, I think. And I think I realized very quickly there's certain things that other people are so much better at, and they do a much better job. And
being efficient with the energy.
Yeah.
Just to wrap this off, you also do, on top of everything else, a lot of work with charities. Do you want to talk to us about that?
Oh, well, it feels like, I don't know. I kind of have this thing that, I'm struggling talking about this because I feel a little bit like I don't want it to be a thing that I do that. But the reason why I do it is that it's the charity. I always spend a little bit of you're talking about allocating time a week. I always think I used to have a thing where I'd spend a little bit of time every day doing something for someone else that maybe someone doesn't know about. And I think it's really easy to do that, but what you get back for it is really important. It just is like sending out something really good and it comes back 5 times. And I don't do it for what I get back, but it's a really easy thing to plan in your day. So, I mean, we're working for, so the 2 charities, the first charity is Getaway Girls, which I just absolutely love this charity because it's got such a great way of reframing, it supports young women to be their best in essence. And we know that if you support women in communities and women in families, that has an effect on the male people in the family, the children, the partners. So it's something I feel really strongly about. And also giving people the opportunity to be the best they can. I think there still is more opportunities for men than women. And, we still know the pay rates aren't the same still. But it's interesting, although it's a women's charity, the amount of men that are involved and help us and support us is amazing. So we're working with Places for People. I think Fortum are helping us with the construction side, and we've got Warburton's. So we've got some really, and everyone's offered us everything for this project we're working on. It's in Leeds. They're building, they've bought a new terrace property, so it's right in the location they need, because I met them through DOI SOS when we did that a couple of years ago with ADP, which was an amazing thing that ADP did. We designed all the complete site and specification. It was absolutely brilliant. I met some amazing people. I learned so much from that project about listening to people on site and talking to people. It was amazing. It was life-changing. But yeah, so we've continued to help with the charity. People want to help. It's just really easy to do. It's really easy to do, and I'd recommend anyone carves that time out every week, whatever that is. Even if it's like just ringing someone, if you're, if someone's okay, or just dropping something round to someone, or we all need that.
Sometimes it can be just as easy to be kind, and that's enough.
Yeah. So
if we don't have time or money or whatever for a full charity work, but sometimes being kind to another person is enough to change that person's day.
Absolutely. And I think, the charity stuff we've done, we've always donated our times. Obviously, we set up a new business. We're not like just throwing money at it. And I think that's much more satisfying. But we're just working on the designs in the garden. We're doing a workshop I'm going up to Leeds in a couple of weeks and doing a workshop with the girls, because the young girls are brilliant at ideas. So I'm super excited about that. I've done one before with them and they were just amazing. So I can just donate my time and the experience I've got. So if that helps, then great.
That's amazing, Jo. Thank you very much for your time and for being with us today.
Thank you so much. And it's just lovely to chat to you further. And I look forward to seeing you at the next event.
Thank you very much for listening to Salotto Sessions. If you enjoyed the chat, please make sure you share with your friends and follow our podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. For more information on our events, please visit ilsalotto.design and designpopup.com. You can also find us on Instagram _designpopup and Il Salotto Glasgow, as well as LinkedIn. Should you have any feedback, questions or suggestions, please do get in touch at hello@ilsalotto.design. We would love to hear from you. Thank you.